Hi, I'm Vivienne Roberts. I'm the curator at the College of Psychic Studies and also the founder of MadgeGuild.com.
Hello, my name is Julia Oak and I was awarded the Madge Guild co-commission between Outside In and Pallant House Gallery.
Julia, congratulations.
Thank you.
What an amazing achievement. The show is fantastic, and if anybody hasn't seen it, I really urge you to come along. We just spent a wonderful hour looking through, and I think it's absolutely magical. And I've got so many questions, but I just think we'll start from the very beginning. And why did you apply? What appealed to you for this co-commission?
I was struck by the fact that Madge Guild started her life in Walthamstow, and I have spent many hours in Walthamstow. I worked there. It was somewhere I visited frequently as a child. I'd walked past her childhood homes and I hadn't even realised. And there was sort of like this, oh wow, moment. And then I sort of did some research for the application, and then I didn't know if I would apply or not. So I sat down and drew a small sketchbook and turned the sketchbook into my application, because I didn't know whether I should or shouldn't apply. But as I worked through the sketchbook and I asked the questions, I realised that it was something I should be doing. And then I made the submission and I was successful. So
That must have felt wonderful.
Absolutely amazing.
Can you remember the moment when you were told? Yeah.
I received some emails, and my email list comes through with the most recent. So I was receiving a congratulations message that I'd been awarded the commission, and I hadn't read the email that said, "You've been awarded the commission." And it was sort of like a double take, and then I had to scroll down through, and then I was just like, oh wow. I didn't know what to do.
And then the hard work began.
Yes, the work began. I'd sort of had an idea for the drawing, and I'd come to a point where I had decided that whether I was successful or not, this drawing had to exist. It had to come into being. So I had collected some resources together already, which was just as well, because we went into another lockdown and things were difficult to get hold of. But I had it all. I had everything I needed to start almost immediately, which was really fortuitous.
I mean, there must have been some real highs and lows because of the delays and the COVID uncertainty, all the things that were happening, and then pushing back the date of when the exhibition began. I mean, it's quite a journey that you've been on just to get to this point.
It has been a journey. It's been a unique experience. I could never have predicted how it would have been. I worked my socks off to meet the original deadline, and then everything was closed down over Christmas, and I was sort of left there on an edge, and I realised I had this opportunity to make a record of my drawing, because the drawing was going into the collection of Outside In, and it won't be coming home with me, and I found that very difficult. So the lockdown that started in January gave me the opportunity to make a drawn record of the drawing, and I created about 80 A5 sheets documenting all the marks I'd made for the drawing for the commission.
And the drawing for the commission, we've got to hear a lot more about that. I mean, it's such an astonishing piece, and it's, how many metres is it?
10 metres.
10 metres, oh my word. And so obviously you couldn't see that in its entirety as you were creating it.
Not at all.
And that's very like Madge Gill with her calico pieces. I mean, did you know a lot about Madge Gill when you started?
I learned about her through the process of the application, but I already had a history of making long drawings. So when I found out that she did these really long drawings on calico, there was a resonance. I felt the dialogue developing between us, because to commit yourself to that sort of size of paper or fabric, you have to go somewhere in your mind. You have to be in a place to tackle that. You have to make it achievable, and I knew I could do that because I'd done it before. You know, I'd drawn on carpet underlay paper, which was 10 meters by 2 meters, so it was larger still than the one that's in the gallery.
Wow. And you often, I've heard you talk about that your work is a conversation with Madge.
Oh, yes.
And it's as if, you know, the two mark makers are there having a conversation through their imagery. And I'm fascinated by that. Can you tell us more about that?
I would sit down and I would light a candle to hold the space. And then I would start drawing, and things would come into my mind, and I'd write them down and save them. And there was sort of this ongoing dialogue, and it was as much about what wasn't included in the research that was, because a lot of documented information relies on the negative traumas in life, and I wanted to look beyond that. I wanted to look into the playfulness, into the hopes, and into the aspirations and things like that. I didn't want it to be about the common grounds of our trauma. I wanted it to be more than that. And as I worked through it, it became obvious to me that there was this sort of message about, you know, things that we had joy in, as well as things that we had sadness in. So yeah, it wasn't words, it was intuition. It wasn't someone sat there telling me things. It came out of the process of drawing.
Would you say that there's a spiritual element to your work?
Definitely. There's a spiritual element to all of my work. It's been there all the time. It takes me that... I try to find different ways of describing it. Sometimes people understand the idea of a meditation, and some people understand the idea of a shamanic journey. But for me, they're a combination. It's something that's special and unique to me. I can't definitely label it with one particular thought process, you know? Yeah.
Yes, because I know you've mentioned, or actually we saw in one of the sketchbooks down there were the runes, and I love the idea that you said that actually it was 25 elements and they made oak.
Yes.
And that can be a signature of yours. I mean, that's just so marvellous, and people wouldn't necessarily know that when they looked at that.
No,
it's such a wonderful thing to know more, more of an in-depth description about the works.
So with the sketchbook on the runes, I was wondering how obvious to make the esoteric element of the drawing. I hadn't resolved that in my thoughts, and I decided to do the the runes, draw the runes out in my small circle drawings. And I started with the first one, and I worked through, and I sort of am more in tune with the Anglo-Saxon runes, and they continue. And the 25th run is oak, and the sketchbooks I bought had 25 pages in them, so the last page was oak, which was really lovely. That was really happy when that happened. But I didn't make them obvious in the drawing. It was enough to do the sketchbook for it. Yeah.
You've also referred to dowsing as well, and it feels as if these pens are sort of energetic extensions of you, and it's just flowing out in such a beautifully intuitive way. Can you tell us more about your process?
I sort my pens out, fill them with ink, I roll out the paper to the bit I'm working on, and then I start drawing. And I have no preconceived idea other than to fill the page. And as I take the pen across the page, things evolve. And it's very much like the dowsing process, where you're looking for something which you can't obviously see, but you know that somewhere it is there. And as I take the pens across the page, then the images sort of evolve. That's basically it. It's not... I don't plan the drawings. I didn't draw it out first and say, I'm going to have all these drawings, over there and this lot over there. Or I didn't think about perspective. I didn't think about how things looked. I didn't think about which direction the light was coming from. I just used the pen as an extension of my hand to draw the images out of the paper.
And I loved it when you said to me earlier, I dived in, and it's at the beginning of that long, wonderful piece, and you said, yes, I just dived in.
I did.
And then you are all throughout it, and then you found your way out. Could you just describe that?
Okay. At the beginning, I just started making a shape, which I was familiar with, and it comes from embroideries that my mother used to make, and my mother, and my aunt were all second names, all Margaret, because my great aunt died when she was very little, and her name was Margaret. So I started with these shapes, and it's always my mother speaking through those shapes, and I just jumped into one and just started drawing them and drawing around them and filling them and extending them across the page until they reached the top. And it was just sort of like swimming around. The beginning of the drawing is very much like swimming around in this sort of primordial soup, this sort of grey, misty area. And then I sort of became part of the drawing. The drawing, I was so intense, the drawing was always with me. I was in the drawing. The drawing was in my mind when I was asleep. And when I woke up, it was the drawing. And then that went on for 6 weeks. And then all of a sudden at the end, I started drawing these shapes, and they reminded me of shisha embroidery. And I realised that I was in Queen's Road in Walthamstow, and that I needed to find a way out of the drawing. And then the shapes, the sort of large sort of Jacobean shape, they became really, really large, whereas at the beginning they were very small. And I had to find a pathway through them to get out. So having jumped into them, I found myself back in them, and they were really big, and I had to draw myself out of the drawing. And there's a sort of a block paving mark that evolved, And I kept on working around the shapes, and I would come to a dead end and I'd have to go back and find a different way out, and then I had to go up this side and that side until I found a route out of the drawing. Because it was quite consuming, and I meant to say at the beginning, the other thing about Walthamstow, I was able to anchor myself in Walthamstow. Walthamstow was my anchor right from the beginning, from my connections. And then at the end, when I found myself in Queen's Road, which is in Walthamstow, I was back in this sort of, in a different space. I came out of the drawing, and it was good to know that I had an anchor, that was there. Because I was on my own for the whole thing. It could be, if I hadn't found myself out of the drawing, I don't know. There was no one there to pull me out, because of lockdown, and I live on my own. And the drawing was just everything for a whole 6 weeks.
Did it help with the lockdown?
It became, lockdown became insignificant. The drawing was everything. The drawing transmuted lockdown. It overshadowed it. It made lockdown nothing. The drawing was everything. That was my whole life.
And how long did you work on that each day, and how long did it take in total?
In total, the drawing took about 350 hours.
Wow.
I would get up at 7, have my breakfast, do a few chores, and then by 8:30 I was at the drawing board until 12 o'clock. And then I would do 4.5 hours in the afternoon, then I'd have my tea, and then I would work on the sketchbooks. I don't watch television, I don't own a television. The drawing was just, that's all there was.
It's a beautiful piece, absolutely breathtaking. And I know that lots of people have been asking about materials. That's the one I've got to ask you, and it'd be really interesting because looking at the piece, you can see the different shades and the intensities of the white. But yeah, it'd be great to know a bit more about the materials.
So, lockdown inhibited my research. I couldn't go and feel and touch and experience paper. I had to choose it on accessibility, really, what I could actually get. And I could work with it. I could have got a different paper, but it would have needed cutting down in size, and I didn't have access to all those sorts of things that I needed. So I bought a roll of paper from an art supply company in Sussex, and then I wanted the technical pens. I bought a set of technical pens with very fine nibs from 0.13 of a millimetre up to 0.7 of a millimetre. And then the ink, I used 2 brands of ink and mixed them together so that I got the luminosity I wanted for the white and the flow from the other one. So I mixed the 2 together to have a compromise, and I filled the pens and drew on the paper. Since, I finished the drawing and lockdown's eased and I've had time to do more research, I've discovered other papers which are quite scrummy.
I can tell you're real passion for the materials, I know. So I've done other drawings since on different paper, but the paper served well. It was a cartridge, a roll of black cartridge paper with acid-free qualities.
So that was, yeah.
And that's the one that's going to be in the Outside In collection now?
Yes, it is, yeah. Yeah.
So that's just amazing that many people will be able to see that, and I'm sure it's going to inspire many, many artists, without a doubt. And there are other elements that you were working on at the time, weren't there? Poetry, for example.
Yes, as I drew, phrases and thoughts would come to me, and I would make a note of them. And sometimes when I got up in the morning, a poem would be playing out in my mind. I'd be sort of going through it in my mind as I woke up. So I'd write them down. And then I used the poetry to add a narration to the film I made about the drawing.
Yes, tell us about the film, because that's on show downstairs as well.
So I made, every time I drew in the morning, I made a time-lapse film of me drawing. I didn't make films in the afternoon because I needed to turn the paper too much. I'm not a contortionist. I had to be able to move. So that, you know, when you're doing a time-lapse film, you have to, you know, make sure that where you're drawing isn't going to be covered by your body or your arm. And once I'd got that sitting position sorted out, I recorded as much as possible when I was sat in that position, drawing comfortably. But if it became uncomfortable to draw in that position, I continued drawing and edited out those sections. So I think I ended up with something like 62-minute time-lapse films to choose from. It was too much to put together in one film, so I selected pieces to go into the film. I started off, and then I recorded, once the drawing was finished, I filmed the whole drawing from beginning to end. I sat on my scooter and zoomed along and filmed it. And then I found a piece of music, and where there was natural breaks in the music, I inserted the time-lapse films. And then I recorded the poetry and added that the poetry to the sound part of the film. So, which was really good because I wasn't filmed reading, I didn't have to work out if the words matched my lips moving.
There's a lot of technical work that goes into this exhibition.
That was, so once I finished the drawing, I kept myself anchored to drawing with my challenge to draw for 30 minutes every day. But basically I went into a different mindset for the film. It's not such a spiritual process. It is equally absorbing, but I find that my thought patterns begin to go places I don't want them to, so I don't do it as an art form permanently. It's not my chosen art form to repeat, you know. It's not something I would say, oh, I'm going to make a film today, I'm going to make a film today. It was a one-off for the commission.
It's obviously quite recording of your artwork is obviously quite an important element, especially like this piece that's going out into the world. I mean, the fact that you did 80 A5 drawings, which were of all of the elements that were in the big drawing, and you've got those, haven't you, as a record of it?
I have, yeah.
And I was saying to you earlier, I don't know many artists that do that. Everyone relies on photography now, but you actually sat, and I've looked through them, and they're wonderful. They're little drawings, all in their own right, and they're amazing. But you just mentioned, I really wanted to know more about it. It's the Draw Every Day challenge that you set yourself. And yeah, tell us more about that, how long that's been going on now.
So the Draw Everyday Challenge started on the first day of the total lockdown that we were put under due to the pandemic. And I set myself the task of 11:30 every day. I would draw for half an hour and stop, which is just as much a challenge because I do have an urge to fill a piece of paper up. So by having to stop after 30 minutes, I had to accept that I wasn't going to put any more marks on that page or on the paper. And then I photographed them and post them on Instagram. And it was a way of, I worked with white on black because it was a way of maintaining connection with the commission, which was put on hold. You know, everything was shut down, we couldn't go anywhere and do anything. So I needed to keep the momentum of the commission going, so I did the draw for 30 minutes every day. And then at first, some of the marks were reminiscent of the drawing, but as I got into it after January, February, after about 8 weeks, these little beings began to appear in my work. And I wasn't quite sure what was going on. And I've sort of evolved into this parallel, previous world of beings where sometimes creatures have 3 legs and 1 eye and beaks and wings and tails. And they just popped up, they just came along.
They're wonderful, aren't they? I mean, they're such fun. And you've got masks and female form. I think I saw the last one, which had a sort of a mermaid kind of figure with sort of in a heart, which was just beautiful. Yes, they're amazing.
They were, you know, sort of, we've had a lot of isolation and people living on their own. You know, everybody's had the challenges, but for people on their own, there's been a different challenge. And it was like 8 weeks into the 3rd lockdown, and it's like they came along to keep me company and keep me going. Yeah, they're my friends.
Well, I can imagine they're very good company. And also the other element of the exhibition is the concertinaed works, which are incredibly jewel-like and vibrant in the middle. It's a sort of an introduction of colour. So if you could just tell us a little bit more about some of those and how the colour sort of came in.
The concertina sketchbooks, I started making concertina sketchbooks, not the ones downstairs, but making them in 2011. My father died, and my creativity became frozen, and I had to find a way out of the stasis. It was just like I was in ice. And I started on the first concertina sketchbook then, and I've been doing them ever since. The ones that are downstairs were created between September and March. And I did 3 specifically for the commission. The first one was about opening the conversation with Madge Gill, and part of it's sort of like this song and these words, and there's sort of speech marks, or are they notes, musical notes. But the process of them is the process of drawing circles goes back even further. That goes back to about 2005, 2004. And I would create pictures just using loads and loads of tiny circles, not overlapping, just touching, sort of about 3 millimeters in diameter. So there was literally thousands of them on a page. and to overcome my worry about colour, I put my pens into an order. I lay the pens out in order first, a colour order I like, and then I take a photograph of them in case I drop them all. And then I start on a symbol and I work through it, and then I pick up the next colour, and keep on going and keep on going. And things grow and evolve, and things begin to touch, shapes touch, and then they merge, and the colours, sometimes they're complementary, sometimes they're sort of like the rainbow. And I just keep working. I just work on them. And on those 99 times out of 100, I have to finish the page. I have to work from edge to edge. Concertina, back cover to front cover. But I don't work on the back. I made a decision not to work on the backs, just the front of the page. But with one of the ones in the Madge Gill Commission, the first one I did for that, the one with the speech marks, I didn't finish it because the conversation is still open, and it was called opening the conversation. So that was that, yeah.
Do you feel like that conversation is still ongoing, even though you've finished the commission now?
Oh gosh, yes. I don't think that conversation will end for a long time. There's always going to be that connection there. Things will come along, and, I went into the gallery space and I was waiting for somebody to arrive to show them the exhibition. I just went in there afterwards. I just went, oh, Madge. It was just like she was in the room with me. She was just there just to talk to. And I didn't need to say anything more than her name. I think she understood. From that experience she's had when she had her work in the Whitechapel, she had that amazing piece of work, and it was just like, I don't need to say anything to you, do I? You understand, that sort of experience of seeing your work in a proper art gallery, put up by proper technicians, and technicians that treat your work with reverence, that roll it out and wear gloves to make sure they don't damage it, all that sort of immense reverence that professional art technicians show artwork is an amazing experience to have had.
And you were here all the time it was being installed?
Yeah, because I made a time-lapse film of it, of the installation, yeah.
That must have been just a wonderful day. So all of that work, it was something like, in total, you said 750 hours?
Yeah, the drawing, the sketchbooks, the poetry, the film, I think it all came to about 750 hours in the end, so...
that's crazy to think about that. And then you were there, and then it all went up, and then you must have just took a step back and just thought, wow.
I took a step back, and I was in a state of disbelief. There was lots of stuff going on, with the we all come to things with our lived experience, and certain elements in my lived experience meant that this exhibition actually overcame an immense hurdle. So yeah.
That sounds very cathartic.
Yeah, it was cathartic, it was empowering. It allowed me to do something that I'd wanted to do for a very long time.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think what's really interesting now is that you have spoken about sort of your conversation with your own work and your conversation with Madge. And now it going into an exhibition, it's suddenly going to form conversations with the public. And whatever that might bring. And you might be aware of some if they tell you are, maybe not. But it's a new element, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
How does that feel?
That's good, because I want my work to talk to people. I have this theory about my artwork. I want it to have an effect on people. I want it to, they might like it, they might dislike it, but that is an effect. What I don't like is indifference where people just dismiss. It's far healthier to say I don't like something than it is just to walk away and say nothing. So I really like to hear what people have to say and what they think, and the fact that it is creating dialogue between people, and people are saying things to other people about it. And that's good, because it's in a passive way. It's not, it's a great way to have a discussion over a piece of art. Even if you don't agree, you can still talk about it and remain friends, So it's important. Art as conversation is really important in my mind.
I noticed you are on Instagram with your draw every day, and the comments are great. So it must be wonderful. You can just immediately see the reaction that people have to them.
I've got Instagram thumb at the moment. Yeah. I hadn't really engaged with Instagram until the commission, and I sort of had to learn how to use it. But it's good because it's very visual, and it has a different element, it has a different engagement than other social media platforms. So yeah, it's not too bad at all. It's not too political. Not that I think politics shouldn't be spoken about. It's just that when I'm in art mode, I'm in art mode.
Yeah, we all feel like that. No, it's great. And at the moment, I know we've spoken about it before, but you're working white on black. But you did mention that there's going to be an introduction of some red paper coming soon.
Yeah, I've got, yes. The red paper will start when the black paper runs out. I had originally planned to finish the black paper on the 21st of June, but I had more sheets of paper than the 21st of June, so it would probably go through to the first week in July. And then I will start the red. But it won't be a lockdown challenge anymore. It will just be a drawing challenge to post an image every day. So the emphasis will change. I'm not quite sure what the emphasis will be yet. Whether it will be, I don't know. I haven't put a thought on it yet. It's not going to be a lockdown challenge. So maybe it's going to be a break-free challenge or a love challenge, I don't know.
That sounds great. I look forward to that.
Red paper, yeah.
I think
a passion challenge.
That sounds perfect. I think you've also got to really just enjoy this time. The work is up. People are able to come in. It's open, and it's on until when? July 18th. So it's a time of celebration as well. To sit back and pat on the back and well done. I mean, what's next? What happens now?
Along with 13,000 other people, I submitted an image for the Royal Academy Summer Show. So I'm quite realistic about that. But it had to be done. It had to be done. I'm working, apart from the challenge, I'm working on sort of a craft brown coloured paper in a range of greys. And I'm working through a sketchbook on that at the moment, and then I'm going to do a larger drawing of that. Maybe get my head around selling stuff.
Ooh. That's a big challenge.
It is a big challenge, yeah. I find that really hard. I find that really hard.
I don't think you're alone. I think that's one of the hardest things for artists.
My friend was on the phone to me and she said, oh, I've got a gallery to represent me. I went, oh, wow, congratulations. And then I thought, do I want that? Do I want to make work in that way? Do I want to go into a niche market and then not be able to get out of it? So there's lots of thoughts about that. It's all a learning curve, you know. It's all a big learning curve. You have to see where things go.
I mean, it is. If you think about what you're doing now compared to what you were doing a few years ago, and you were, or even last year, you were doing lots of textiles.
Oh gosh, yes.
And you haven't really touched on that while you've been doing this, have you? It's sort of taken a back step.
No. Textiles, I can't even pick up a ball of wool. It's just, yeah, textiles has a completely different story. And whereas I loved doing a project with the community at Pallant House, it doesn't have a very healthy background in my life, so it's sort of gone on the back burner for a while until I can find a way out of it, you know. Yeah, so I textiles has been a big part of my life, you know, a big part of my family's life. Seamstresses, sail makers in my family tree, you know, so all sorts of textiles has always been very important. But just because it's important and I can do it, it doesn't mean I should do it.
No, it sounds like you'd be very good at doing many things. I can tell lots of different creative avenues that you've been down.
Yeah.
It just caught me there saying tree, and I thought, I wanted to ask you earlier about the trees because it's a big element in your work. There's the yew tree and the plane tree, and even you as Julia Oak, I see has elements in it, and that they mean quite a lot to you, don't they?
Yes, they do. The yew tree in particular, there is a church in East Sussex where I was baptised as a child, and outside the porch is a very, very old yew tree predating the church, and it's now hollow inside. And I did this very big drawing many years ago about the twisting, turning branches of the yew tree. So it sort of anchors me at the beginning of my life, you know, a yew tree does. And then the plane trees, when I became ill, I was in hospital in London, and the plane trees were everywhere, you know. They when I went in for appointments, it's all plane trees from Victoria to the hospital. So they were a regular companion with their little lymph node baubles hanging down the plane trees. And then there was the birch, which is about... you know, they're an amazing tree, they're a pioneer, and I think in some ways what I do. With my ill health, I've sort of been a pioneer, and people have had to reevaluate their expectations, you know, in the medical profession, because I'm still here, so that's the birch. And then the oak tree, because it matures at 50. And that's just about when I started having the confidence to be an artist. So there's all significance. And oak trees, you know, Henry VIII chopped lots of those down in the village I come from to build his boats. So, yeah, Julia Oak, that's where I get it from.
That's great, isn't it? Yeah, it's a perfect amount of symbolism involved in that, in the work. And you actually did title it In the Enchanted Woods, or Into the Enchanted Woods.
Enter these enchanted woods, yeah. That's a line from a poem. I've forgotten the author's name, I always do this. But if people really want to check that out, there's a diary entry on the outside in webpage about it.
You can look it up.
But it's the first. It says, "Enter these enchanted woods, you who dare," and then it goes on to describe all sorts of things in the woods. And yeah, that's just where I was with it. It's, you know, I dared to go into these woods of enchantment. I dared to step inside it, and I spent 6 weeks in it, and then I came out. That was the drawing, wasn't it? Going into the woods like that, it really was.
And I think now they're on show, you're inviting us on a part of that journey. And
yes.
I, for one, have thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Okay.